All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a closer look at something that might seem pretty basic at first glance, but trust me, it's way more fascinating than you might think domain names.
You got that right. I mean, we use them every day without even thinking about it.
Exactly. But the thing is, there's a whole world of strategy, psychology, and even big money behind those simple web addresses.
hmm
And you sent in some really interesting sources for this deep dive, so.
Yeah, we've got a mix of blog posts about premium domains and actual domain portfolio to look at.
Oh, and even a company that specializes in domain management.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like a multifaceted view of the whole domain name landscape. It's going to be good.
Totally. Like I was looking at this blog post about premium domains, and some of the names they're talking about are just wild.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, for example, there's one called Cognition.ai.
Yeah, I can see that one commanding a high price.
You know,
Very trendy.
right. It just screams cutting edge tech startup, doesn't it? But then there's actnowforchange.com, which feels completely different. More like,
Yeah, more like a social impact organization or something.
yeah, exactly. It's like the domain name itself is already telling a story.
You've hit on something really important there. A domain name isn't just an address, it's a first impression. It sets the tone before someone even clicks through to your website.
I'm starting to realize there's way more strategy to this than I initially thought. But it makes me wonder, what happens when a trend fades? Like, remember a few years ago when everyone was obsessed with .io domains?
Oh, yeah, that was a big thing.
What happens to those domains when the hype dies down?
Well, some might lose value, sure, but others can actually become more valuable over time.
Really?
Yeah, think of it like vintage treasures, especially if those domains were associated with successful businesses or, those big moments in internet history.
Huh, interesting. So it's almost like investing in stocks.
You got it. You're betting on a domain's potential to increase in value over time, and that's why we're seeing more and more sophisticated domain portfolios and marketplaces popping up.
Like, people are buying and selling domains just like they would real estate.
Exactly. There are even metrics to evaluate a domain's worth, just like, say, location or the history of ownership might affect the price of a house.
Wow, okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
It's a whole world unto itself, really.
So we've talked about trends in investing, but what about this Meet.eth portfolio? This was really interesting because it has such a wild mix of domain names.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example of how diverse these portfolios can be.
There's everything from the super serious like onchaindataprivacy.com to the just plain funny like england.lol.
It's not always about finding the most valuable domain out there. Sometimes it's about targeting a niche market or creating a memorable brand or...
Or just having some fun and seeing what sticks.
Right. But there's a real psychology to it, too. Why do some domain names stick in our minds while others just fade away?
It's true. Some domains just feel right?
Absolutely. Factors like length, memorability, and using the right keywords all play a role, but it's also about evoking an emotion or sparking a bit of curiosity.
So it's not just about being clever. You have to understand how people's brains work too.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked trends, investments, even a bit of psychology. Now let's talk about Dora domains. They're not just buying and selling domains. It's more like they're managing domains as valuable assets.
That's a great point. Dora Domains represents a growing trend of treating domain names as serious digital property.
So they're like domain whisperers,
Yeah,
coming in and saying, here's how to make the most of what you've got.
that's a great way to put it. And they're working with some really interesting names too. Agriculture.ai, for example.
Oh, right.
Right. It's a fresh take on a traditional industry. Or how about stablecoins.finance?
Very clear what they're going for there.
Exactly. And then there's setyourgoals.com.
Ooh, that one almost feels inspirational.
Right. That's the power of a well-chosen domain. It can evoke an emotion and create a connection before someone even clicks on the website.
It's making me think, if the Dura Domains team were looking at my personal brand, what kind of domain would they suggest?
What do you think? What kind of domain would represent your unique strengths and aspirations?
Wow. Okay. That's a really interesting question to think about. I'm going to need a minute to process that one.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that question about my personal brand and domain name, it's really got me thinking. It's like this whole thing suddenly feels very personal.
I know, right? It's fascinating how a seemingly simple thing like a domain name can become so deeply intertwined with our sense of self, especially as our online and offline lives continue to blur.
It's true. It's like we create profiles on all these different social media platforms, but there's something different about having your own domain name that feels more permanent,
Yeah.
more substantial.
Absolutely. There's a sense of ownership and control that comes with it. Like, you're not at the mercy of some algorithm or the whims of a social media company. Your domain is your space. You get to decide what happens there.
Yeah, I get that. So let's say I'm ready to take the plunge and invest in a domain name. Where do I even begin?
Well, first things first, you need to define your goals. What are you hoping to achieve with this domain?
Hmm, good question. I guess for me, it would be a mix of showcasing my work and building my personal brand. I'm a freelance writer, so having a strong online presence is pretty crucial these days.
Okay, so in that case, you'd want a domain that's easy to remember, easy to spell, and reflects your writing style or niche.
Makes sense.
You might even want to incorporate keywords related to your area of expertise.
Like, traveltalesbymyname.com or wordsmithmyname.com or something like that.
See, you're getting it.
Yeah.
Those are great examples. And then there's the whole thing about domain extensions.
Oh, yeah, the .com versus .net versus all the new ones like .io and .blog.
Right. Does it really matter? Well, yes and no. .com is still the most recognizable, I'd say, like the gold standard, but other extensions can be strategic choices too.
How so?
Well, .io is popular in the tech world. .blog is pretty self-explanatory. And then you have country-specific extensions if you're targeting a particular geographic location.
Wow, okay. I had no idea there was so much to think about.
It's more than just picking a name and hoping for the best. It's a decision that requires some thought and strategy, and that's where a company like DurDomains can be really helpful.
Right, because they have all that expertise. But what about people who, don't have the budget to hire a domain expert? What advice would you give them?
Honestly, there's a ton of information available online. You can find domain name generators, appraisal tools, articles about best practices, all sorts of stuff. So do your research, brainstorm different names and extensions, and most importantly, think long-term.
Long-term, huh?
Yeah, choose a domain name that you'll be happy with for years to come, one that will grow with you as your online presence evolves.
It's like planting a tree, right? You got to choose
Yeah.
the right spot, nurture it, and then watch it grow.
I love that analogy. And just like a tree, a good domain name can bear fruit in all sorts of unexpected ways, opening doors to opportunities, connecting you with a wider audience. Who knows what's possible?
So we talked about choosing a domain name, domain authority, the business side of things. Now I have a question that's been bugging me. What happens to all those domains people buy but don't use? Like, there's got to be a ton of them out there.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of this whole world. There are actually companies that specialize in buying, selling, and even leasing unused domains.
Wait, you can lease a domain name?
You can. Remember that meet.eth portfolio we were looking at earlier? Some of those domains might be held as investments, or they might be available to lease. It's a great option for someone who needs a specific name but doesn't want to buy it outright.
So there's a whole rental market for domain names. That's wild.
It is, and it just adds another layer of complexity and opportunity to the whole landscape. It's pretty remarkable how much depth there is to all of this, isn't it? Like, it's a whole hidden world within the internet.
Totally. But we've only just scratched the surface, haven't we?
Yeah.
What about the future of domain names? What trends are you seeing that might shake things up even further?
Oh, that's where things get really interesting. We're seeing the rise of blockchain technology, the explosion of NFTs, and the growing buzz around the metaverse. It's a whole new frontier for domain names.
Yeah, it's amazing to think how much our perception of domain names has changed, even just the last few years. We're not just talking about website addresses anymore. It's investments, branding, digital identity, the whole nine yards.
It really is a whole new ballgame, and a lot of that has to do with some pretty big technological shifts that are happening right now.
Like what?
Well, you've got the rise of blockchain technology, the explosion of NFTs, and of course everyone's talking about the metaverse these days.
Okay, those are some big, buzzy words. Let's break it down. How does blockchain change the game for domain names?
Okay, so traditionally, domain names are registered and managed by centralized authorities, companies or organizations that basically act as gatekeepers.
Right.
But with blockchain, you're talking about decentralized ownership. The records are kept on a distributed ledger, which means it's way more secure, more transparent, and much harder to censor.
So it's like taking the power away from those central authorities and giving it back to the people.
Exactly. And that opens up a world of possibilities. What if your domain name was more than just an address? What if it was like a digital key, giving you access to different online services, communities, maybe even virtual worlds?
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. But what about NFTs? I thought those were mostly for digital art and things like that.
They are, but the technology behind NFTs can be applied to domain names too. Think of an NFT as like a digital certificate of ownership recorded on a blockchain.
So it's proof that you own that specific domain.
Exactly. And it makes it super easy to transfer or trade your domain. Plus, it adds another layer of security, knowing for sure that you are the rightful owner.
And that could be really valuable, especially as we move into these new digital spaces.
Absolutely, especially when you think about the metaverse.
Okay, here's where I get a little lost.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about the metaverse, but I still don't quite grasp what it is or what it means for something like a domain name.
Yeah, it's still a bit of a fuzzy concept, but essentially, think of it as a bunch of different immersive digital worlds, all kind of merging together into one big online experience. Virtual reality, augmented reality, online gaming, it's all part of it.
Okay, I'm kind of seeing it.
And in those metaverse worlds, domain names take on a whole new meaning. Instead of just pointing to a website, your domain could be the address of your virtual storefront, your online art gallery, even your virtual home.
So it's like digital real estate.
Exactly. It's all about location, location, location. And just like in the real world, those prime spots are going to be valuable.
I got to admit, this is all starting to sound a bit like science fiction. But then again, technology has a way of doing that, doesn't it?
It does. And that's what makes it such a fascinating time to be exploring the world of domain names. It's constantly evolving with new possibilities popping up all the time.
All right, so final question. What's the one big takeaway you want to leave our listeners with today?
I think the most important thing to remember is that domain names are more than just web addresses. They're evolving into digital keys that unlock access to a whole online universe. They represent ownership, identity, community, and even potential wealth in the emerging digital economy.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. Makes you look at that little string of text in the address bar a whole lot differently.
It really does. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's both simple and profound, a gateway to endless possibilities, limited only by our imagination.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go out there and stake my claim in the digital world. Thanks so
Perfect.
much for taking us on this incredible deep dive into the world of domain names.
My pleasure. And remember, folks, the journey of exploration never really ends. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next big thing in the digital world.
That's all for today, everyone. Happy domain hunting.